Hi, guys. Today I am here with Jodi Watkins. I am really excited to have her on the podcast. Jodi, do you want to go ahead and give my audience a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Hi, everyone. First off, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Uh, I, appreciate you allowing me to come on here and just share a little bit that can help your audience as well.
Yeah.
My name is Jodi Watkins. I grew up in a small town called Fernandina Beach, Florida. I live in Jacksonville, Florida right now, which is right north of there. Or sorry, right south of there. But my upbringing was a little chaotic. And I found that a lot of people can relate to it. So I do speak on it freely now. When I was 3, my dad left. It was just my mom and she remarried when I was 6, but she remarried to someone who was very violent. He had a lot of mental health issues. And so that was my life. And I just thought that was normal. So that's why we were kind of chatting before we started this. And, that's kind of one of the things where I was just like, oh, this is normal life, right? This is what everybody deals with. And then come to find out it wasn't what everybody dealt with. So that was a little bit of my upbringing that never went away. I became homeless at the age of 16. I was a junior in high school. And so I ended up staying with a bunch of people through that year so I could finish high school. After I graduated high school, I was basically living out of my car. And I had a good friend. We grew up together. She's still 3 years older than me. I call her my sister. She's my big sister. I'm an only child, so my family's my family. But she looked out for me, so that made her my big sister. She invited me to come down to Gainesville, Florida. So I ended up moving down there, went to school, played basketball at the time, and got into sport and exercise science, it's funny because of all the years of doing something else, I ended up coming full circle back to where I was. So
So
yeah, so that was a little bit of the start. I ended up in the military after I graduated and just kind of went from there. So
awesome. Yeah. Um, well, thank you for sharing that story. It's kind of crazy how when you're a child and you're living your experience, you don't know anything different, right? So it's just that's normal for you. And then you
mhm.
grow up and you start to see what's going on in other people's lives and you're like, oh, like maybe that wasn't normal.
Right. Yeah. So I never really had, and I found that a lot of, especially women, can relate to this. It's when you don't really have that man figure that you can kind of look up to, you don't really know what you need to look for later on.
Mm,
So it's there's a thing where we kind of tend to settle, right? And we don't really know how to. I self-sabotaged a lot, or I just was like, oh well, wait, you're too good. Right? Like I'm scared of that. Right.
you're like,
So
you're
there's
too good. So now there's red flags.
yeah, yes. But I found that that's actually pretty common.
Mm,
So the more that I talk about these things, I have people message me and reach out, and I have a community where everything's anonymous so people can come in and, share their dirt if they want to. And we kind of engage and support each other that way. But yeah, I found that when I went through a therapy called EMDR back in, it was 2 years ago, and 2021. So I went through that, and in that we kind of went totally back to the past. And I'd never done a deep dive like that. And I tell people, I'm like, that was probably one of the hardest things that I've done. And I've done some really hard stuff in my life. But going back, I mean, I was 43 at the time. My trauma started at 40 years, right? And
yeah.
it just kept going. So I ended up getting diagnosed with complex PTSD, which is basically when the events just keep going.
Mm,
Um, and it's not diagnosed very often, but it's something that a lot of us deal with. And like I said, the more I started sharing it, the more I found out that I wasn't alone. And now everybody else knows that they're not alone. So I love that.
yeah, it's a good feeling to know you're not alone. I love that you brought up the EMDR. I've been so intrigued by that. My husband did that before we met, which I think is probably the only reason that we're able to be together is because he was able to like, process a lot of the things that had happened to him and figure out why he was the way that he was. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I need that.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Um, and I talk to people all the time, and I'm just like, if you need somebody, I will say, like I said, it was one of the hardest things that I've done. And depending on the amount of trauma and the depth of the trauma, it can be very difficult for everybody around you too when you're going through that. So the fact that you guys got married, I think after, right? That was probably beneficial for you.
Oh yeah,
um,
definitely.
because I'm already married. I was already married. Our kid she's about 14 now. So I was going through this stuff. They're there, right? So
Mhm.
nobody else understood really what was going on, and I didn't understand it either. I had emotions that were coming out that I didn't even know how to explain.
Yeah.
You get so used to, like I said earlier, suppressing, compartmentalizing, right? Like that was my life. And in the military, more trauma happened, and I still, that was how I lived. It was like, oh, you just keep going, suck it up, keep going, right?
Mhm.
And so I just thought that was, so my letting my emotions out was not an easy thing for me. I hid them very well. That was easier for me. Um, so as I was going through the EMDR, it's like, these emotions are coming out. I cry I like cry randomly now. And then it's like, but it's freeing because
Yeah.
now I don't have to care. And that's why I'm a business owner, because I don't want to work for anybody that's going to judge me, because I don't want them to judge me and I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Which is why
that.
I have this shirt on today. I'm
I
not for
was gonna
everyone.
say
Like,
I was gonna say she's wearing a shirt that says I'm not for everyone, and I love it. I was like, that is a perfect shirt.
I have another one that says, if you don't like me, that's your problem. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had to learn how to embrace this, and I've never been one to really conform. Like I joke around, when I was in the military, I don't really know how I got through, except for I was really good at what I did, and I gained the respect of the people around me. And so I think that's why I made it through, but I was never really one to conform. I always kind of colored outside the lines. Um, and sometimes I think that's needed, you know?
Yeah.
And even so, then fast forward, getting into health coaching and, personal training, nutrition coaching, all the things that I've been doing now, and then the entrepreneur coaching that I do now, mostly mindset stuff. Um, it's been beneficial to that too,
Mhm.
to not conform, because I tell people, I'm like, look, when you come to me, it's not going to be easy, because I had to go through the hard stuff. And I
Mhm.
know that the tough stuff is lasting, it's sustainable. I have tools that will last me for the rest of my life. My therapist, after we, finished the EMDR, she said, you're always going to be dealing with these things. You're always going to have the anxiety. You're always going to have, she diagnosed me with chronic depression, and the complex PTSD. She said, these are not things that are going to go away, but
Mhm.
now you can embrace them.
Yeah.
Don't hide them. Don't feel like you have to hide them. And if you're around people that make you feel like that, go somewhere else. And
Yeah.
that's been the game changer for me. When I go speak, I send out, I have a YouTube video that I send out, and I want them to know, hey, this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a real person. I'm not trying to be on some high horse. Like, I'm not Superwoman. I promise. I'm just as human as everybody else. Um, so I love that I can do that now. And, I'm 45 now, and the fact that I can finally do that in life, and so when I have women around me that are either close to my age, even younger, or even older, right? And maybe they haven't embraced that yet. I just let them know, like, hey, there's going to be a point where you're going to need to cross over on this, because it
Mhm.
can be debilitating. And that's what happened with me. I mean, I hit a really dark place where I just didn't even want to be here anymore.
Mm.
And I don't ever want to see anybody get to that place. So that's what,
Yeah.
everything that I do, that's what it's for.
Yeah. That's beautiful and so powerful. And we need people like you, to help other people on the journey and to not be afraid to speak out and just be who you are because I mean, authenticity is like seriously key for every part of life. It's key for being able to not only connect with yourself and others, but I also think like one of the things that's missing in business, which is not as important as like, just living and loving life, but like for us as entrepreneurs, we love business, right? But one of the ways that I see a lot of people failing at business is they just try and like copy other people, especially in the health and wellness industry. And it's like, well, people are really seeking that true authenticity. And if like you might, like your shirt says, I'm not for everyone, like you're gonna deter people who aren't your people. But that's great
Right.
because you're gonna attract the people that are your people. And that's exactly what you want. Because you like I have had clients that are not my people, and it
Me
is
too.
not fun.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. And so I've done that, what you were just talking about, like I hired business coaches when I first got back to Jacksonville. When I first started my business, I was overseas and we were in a pretty small area. I was in Okinawa, Japan, and word of mouth, it just spreads, and I was doing bodybuilding back then and stuff like that. So I was out there, people knew who I was. And so I never had to market anything. It was just, I always had great people actually to work with. I mean, it was few and far between every now and then that I would have people that we didn't really mesh or whatever. But when I got back to the States, I was just a face in the crowd. My business, I have clients that, because I don't take on clients forever. I try to teach them everything I know, and then hey, keep going, right? If you need me, if you need me later on, book a strategy call. We'll get on a strategy call or whatever. But I don't want people to have to rely on a coach. So I always just taught them everything. Even my personal trainer clients, I taught them how to work the machines, because I'm like, if I'm not here, I still want you to be able to do this, right? So I just made sure I taught them everything. And so, but when I got back here, it was just like, okay, now what? There's 50 million gyms. There's, where do I fit in, kind of thing. And so that was kind of a struggle, because I'm like, what is this marketing thing? I don't know how to do that. Like I posted videos on Instagram and I thought that was good enough, right? Like it always was before. So I ended up going through a marketing class here in Jacksonville, Florida, through the Jack's Chamber and the Chamber of Commerce here. And then I hired a couple of business coaches, and they all had systems. But the problem was they would work at first, but then they started pulling at me, because I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. And so I started feeling that pull kind of early on. And so what you just said is very, very strong, because like when I work with entrepreneurs and business owners, that's kind of what we talk about. It's like, you got to find your true self. It starts with you. It started with me. My business changed when I changed. My business changed when I learned how to heal through some of the things that I've been holding on to, and was able to talk about them. Even when I published my book, I have a chapter on nutrition. I didn't share the stuff that I went through with my mom, because I hadn't really healed through that yet. It was more difficult for me to talk about it back then. But I will say, and this is something I always share with people, the people around us are very important. I did not get here by myself. I will never say that I did. I was led to the right people. Thank God. Like I was led to the right people, because I've been led to the wrong people. So I was finally led to the right people, but I think it was because I was more open to that at the time. I stopped trying to force it. So that's why now I talk about unforced leadership, unforced. So I have a slide on when I do that keynote, and the forest is like a road. There's a road and a rock, a big huge boulder. and she's just looking at it like, now what, right? And then the other picture is the freedom. It's like the open road, and there's, it's a guy on a motorcycle and he's free. And so I learned over time, over a lot of years, that when we force it, right, we're getting clients that are not our people, right? We're operating out of lack instead of abundance. And we can become miserable that way. Yeah. So instead, if we just learn how to, and this is something I had to work on, be more patient.
Yeah.
Understand that not everything is not instant gratification. I had to really do the same thing in business that I was teaching my clients to do. That's where it hit me. Yeah. I was like, I'm looking for instant gratification, but I'm telling them not to. And what I started noticing was a lot of business owners do the same thing. Yeah. Everybody wants the magic pill. We live in this Pop-Tart world where everybody but I need it now, right? Like you're miserable at work and you're not operating your purpose because you want the Pop-Tart. You want it done, right? So I'm grateful for the doors that have shut for me now. Not when I was going through it, I was not grateful. I will say that. But I am grateful now because it's led me to where I was meant to be, you know.
Mhm.
And there's a valley that I've had to walk through, and it's deep. But what I've learned is when we have other people around us that are come on, right? So I've had that, and now that's why I try to be that person for other people, because I know how much that helped me when I needed that, when I needed the people to say, "Hey, I got you," right? And I'm up here in water, right? Like I'm drowning, like, and I got somebody that just gets me, even if they just get me right here where I can breathe, right? Like just a little bit, and then eventually over time, that water just got a little bit lower. So
Yeah, yeah, no, the people you surround yourself with are so important. And also, like, kind of going back to what we were saying before, it can help you feel not so alone on your journey, and like just being able to get outside perspectives is so powerful because sometimes we're kind of just like in it. We're just doing the thing, right? And we see straight ahead, but we don't see like all this other stuff that's going on either side. And it can be so helpful if someone just steps in and is like, "Hey, did you ever think about this? Or maybe you shouldn't do it that way." And then all of a sudden you're like, "Whoa, like what?"
right,
So crazy. And also just that feeling of community is something like when you think about all the things in life that are important for your health, we think often of like nutrition and working out and sleep, water. These are all like really important things, but I think community is one of those foundational pieces that keep us alive and keep us healthy. And it was really fun. There's another girl. So I live in a very small little valley in Wyoming. There's, I don't know, maybe I'm probably going to butcher this, but there's probably like less than 6,000 people that live in this valley. And, but we're starting to get a push from, have you heard of Jackson Hole, Wyoming?
mm-mm.
So Jackson Hole is like, it's got like the Grand Tetons, it gets a lot of
Okay,
traffic, Yellowstone, all of that. So it's too expensive to live there for most people. I lived there for like 7 years, and like you're literally just putting all your money to rent. It's not fun.
mm,
So we're getting this push from Jackson to everyone moving to this valley because we're the valley over. And we're like, okay, so like this valley is changing and growing, and we need to make sure that there is a community here that is supportive of like-minded women. So me and one of my friends who lives just down the road, she's a chiropractor. We were like, we need to start doing something to really help foster a community of female entrepreneurs. And last night we held just a meetup, and we were
mhm.
like, okay, like if 6 people show up, that's going to be so awesome. We had 40 people. Like it was
Oh
crazy.
wow,
I was like, who would have known that in this little tiny valley, there are this many women who want to like help each other, support each other. They want to make an impact on this community. And it was
yeah,
just like, it was so beautiful. And I'm like such an introvert, usually just the person that wants to be behind my computer.
yeah,
But like, there's no better feeling than that, than being able to bring together like-minded women to just,
right,
support each other and foster a cause, I guess. So,
yeah. Well, and
yeah.
that's, I mean, I'm grateful. I'm part of something like that here. But then also the resource that I use to coach people and then also provide information and educate and things like that. Like we have a huge community. We have a women's community, and that's one of the things that we have in there. So now we have people nationwide, right? Like, or
Oh, awesome.
worldwide. There's no limit.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to kind of get that out there because it's a different resource. It's not Facebook or anything. It's not social media. So it's kind of newer, but so we're trying to get that out there because that way, say I don't have access to someone, at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I can go in and, post a discussion, even anonymously. And, I might wake up at 7 o'clock and then I have like, however many responses. And I'm like, oh, support. Yay. It's not just me. Right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And I'm trying to share it with everybody because I'm like, everybody needs to be a part of this. So definitely let me know if you're interested. I'll be sure I share it. Maybe your network wants to know too.
Yeah,
Because we would
definitely.
love to have more groups come in and just, even if it's like your local group or whatever, that way you have that ability to, reach each other in the,
Yeah.
days that you're not in person around each other. But that community, like you said, it is crucial to have.
Mhm.
Um, and it's funny you said that about introvert. I wrote an article a while back on LinkedIn, and it was the introverted extrovert.
Mm.
Because what I
Yeah.
found through all my therapy is I was not the extrovert that everybody thought that I was. And I think that that was something else that I forced. I was trying to be on like all the time.
Mm.
And I was exhausted. I would just get
Mm.
exhausted and I didn't understand. And so no wonder I was depressed all the time, right? Because I'm not, I'm sitting here preaching on self-care and I didn't even know. So one of the big things that I work with people on too is the self-awareness, right? There are some things that we don't even know we're kind of dealing with. So now I know that, like, if I go speak or, on here, even on a podcast, or I meet somebody face to face, or I'm, in front of whatever that looks like, I know that before and after I need to take a break. I need to kind of just be.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that before. There's sometimes where, like, once a month I'm like, I'm gonna go rent an Airbnb and just be by myself. I need that sometimes. It's nothing against my family, it's nothing against everybody around me. But that's something that has really helped me tremendously. So you saying about being an introvert, I think sometimes we all have that ability to do that, and we probably should take that time to ourselves every now and then. Because
Mm.
even though it's great to have a community, it can be exhausting when you're just around people 24/7, right? Like, sometimes it's like, okay, I need a break.
I'm like, I don't know at this point what energy is mine and what is everyone
Yes.
else's. Like, what am I like the emotions I'm feeling? Like, I'm just overwhelmed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that is something else. What you just said is important too, because I always talk about like releasing other people's burdens.
Mm.
I'm an empath.
Yeah,
As a
same.
health coach, there you go. As a coach or somebody that helps people, that can be detrimental to us, to our
Oh, yeah.
mental. So what I used to do, and maybe you can relate to this, I carried everybody else's burdens. It would really hit, right? Especially if I could relate to it, especially if it was like a similar situation, something I'd been through. Um, I would carry those burdens, but not only that, but if that person wasn't ready to kind of change their journey up or change things about them, I would allow that to fester inside of me.
Yeah.
So what I've had to learn how to do is understand that I can't help people that don't want to be helped, number one. And number two, I can be that person that they confide in, but I have to release it right after. I can't harbor it. Um, it's not 100% because that's a very difficult habit to break. um, but the more we work on it, it's just, the last chapter of my book is consistency. Everything is progress, not perfection, right? None of us are 100% in everything. It doesn't matter who we are. I don't track my foods every day, right? Like, I just, so, but it's the consistency. It's learning the habits. It's, even in business, it's like that consistent flow, right? Understanding that we don't have to get it all done at one time. But if we can just, there's a book, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that, but it's really good, where he just talks about, a little bit at a time, a little bit
Yeah.
at a time, right? And then I touch on that in my book too, in the mindset chapter, because there's another one called The Power of Habit. And, he talked about that, where it was like, if you just do a little bit at a time, you're building those habits. And habits take time to build, especially, there's another book that I read, and he was talking about after the age of 35, we have these, it's like a computer system, and we're trying to reprogram a computer software system that's already in place, right? The software becomes hardware, and then we're just hardwired to do the things that we've been doing. Like, I don't know if you've ever driven anywhere. I know I have. I've driven somewhere and been like, how did I even get here? Right? Like, so we're just pre-programmed to, based on our past, based on how we grew up, based on whatever we've encountered in life, we develop these programs, and these programs just keep running in the background. It doesn't matter what we're involved in. So if we don't become aware of some of those things, we can never shift the program. We can never change the program. We can never, put a new code in. I'm not a software person, but I have a friend who is, so I know those terms now. But we can never put a new code in. We can never change the wiring. So that's
Yeah.
something that we have to consider too. It takes time to do these things, but we have to understand that we just can't harbor everybody else's stuff. We just
Hmm.
really can't. We have our own stuff to harbor and work through. And so if we're harboring everybody else's, that gets really heavy.
Oh
Really.
yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because that was one of the main reasons why I stopped taking one-on-one nutrition clients because I was just, I mean, like most people, maybe you're going to shed some new light on some nutrition facts, right? But like for the majority, most people understand what is good and what is not good for them. But when it comes down to it, it's all a lot of subconscious wiring, it's a lot of emotional things, it's probably trauma, like it's all of these like psychological and emotional programs that are what actually need help and need rewiring. And so then people don't do what you recommend and then they don't see the results that you want. And then as that empath, you take on all that emotion because
Yes.
you know how bad it feels to feel bad. And you
Right.
know, like you just want these people to be happy and healthy. And it's like so overwhelming. And I know like I'm happy I made the pivot I did in my life, but I know that it doesn't have to slow you down. And I also think that like one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing to support other practitioners and coaches is because it's so important. Like that is a very needed role in the society. So I think having tangible ways that you can work through that, because I think most healers are empaths. Like that
Mhm.
kind of just goes with the territory. So
There's
what
a
are
reason we do what we do. There's always
exactly,
a reason. Yeah.
yeah. So when you say to release that, like, is there tangible steps you take to kind of release those other people's emotions, or is it just, yeah, I'll just let you expand on
It
that.
needs to be a conscious decision.
Mm,
So my journey led me in 2019. I hit a very, very dark place for the first time. I guess the first time I really allowed it to happen. I'll say that.
mm,
I'm not going to say it was the first time it happened, but it was the first time I allowed it to happen. Um, and out of that, I began the spiritual journey. Um, and it it allowed me to believe in something bigger than me, which I hadn't really done before.
yeah.
So I always tell people it's like I don't care, like I call my higher power God now, but whatever it is, we have to believe like there's a there's a higher power out there that's leading us, right? Like there's energy, there's pulls, there's
Oh, yeah.
um and I've talked to people who, I mean, I've talked to atheists, I've talked to, so I never tell people what to believe, but
Mhm.
we have to believe there's something out there, right? There's something higher than us. There's something above us.
Yeah.
None of this world could have been created without something, right? Like I don't care who you are or what you believe. So for me, that's the journey that I chose to take. Um, it allowed me to just kind of learn differently and be open to something different, to open my heart up. I had a very hardened heart, to be
Mhm.
honest. I had a wall up and it was very difficult to penetrate that wall. And you can't really operate like that in business. So it didn't matter how much of an empath I was. Um, what I also started realizing was I was getting triggered, when people would talk about certain things. There was a point where I just couldn't even finish a phone call. Well,
Yeah.
that's a problem. So for me, it was just like I said, the self-awareness part. What, what am I doing? What am I showing? I also, it was my daughter and I at the time. My husband was still active duty military, so he was, when we came back from Japan. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was in New Mexico to finish out his career. Um, so she and I lived by ourselves at the time. She was 9, and she was very reactive, and that showed me something too, because as much as I was like, well, you can't treat me like that, I'm your mom, right? Like you can't talk to me like that, like what are you even doing, right? Well, I listened to something, and I don't know if it was a podcast. That I listened to a lot of different things, so I can't tell you exactly what it was, but I know I listened to something, and it was talking about how our actions can reflect on our children.
Mm.
And it really made me start thinking differently, where it was like, what? I'm the common denominator. I'm the common denominator. So it's easy to like point fingers at everybody else. I talk about this in my book too, because I had to come out of that journey, right? I actually wrote my book out of that journey. So I talk about that, where it's like, it's easy to blame everybody else, right? It's easy to be like,
Mm.
you did that, right? But at some point in our lives, we gotta turn that mirror around. And so to answer your question, to learn how to release it, I just realized that carrying those burdens was going to be the death of me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I really want to be the person who gets to help people, and I say gets to because I mean I'm grateful for that, who gets to help people on a regular basis, I can't carry all those burdens. And that's why I had to learn how to release mine. So, I talked about the EMDR a little bit, going through that journey, and whether it's a therapist or now I end up being a life coach, whether it's working with somebody that you can relate to or working with a therapist or whatever that looks like. If people have a lot of trauma in their past, I do say go through the EMDR, because that's a trained professional that can help you get through that. I usually tell people, hey, I can be your support system through that because I have been through it, but definitely enable that person who's been trained for that. That had to happen. That part had to happen for me to
Yeah.
learn how to release my burdens and release other people's burdens. She helped me tremendously with that. She's like, you can't carry everybody else's stuff. She's like, look what I do, right? Like, look what I do. You
Yeah.
have to release it. You can't harbor that, because therapists, they're pretty much empaths too. I mean, I know not all of them. Some of them are probably just there for the paycheck, unfortunately. I've encountered some of those too, but but the ones that are there, they've been doing it. Like mine was there for 30 years. She's been doing it for 30 years.
Mm.
Obviously she loves what she does, right?
Yeah.
So for her, it was learning from her, being open to learning from her. And that's what I try to pay forward with people too. It's like, it is a process. Like I said, there's one thing I wrote a long time ago around like, hey, I'm a recovering addict. I'm addicted to people pleasing. There's different addictions, right? It doesn't, everybody thinks it's drugs and alcohol, but it's different addictions. Is it people pleasing? Is it self-sabotage? Is it all of it? And we really have to take a deep dive. And so to give a tool, I would say find someone that you can relate to, find someone that wants to help you, and begin taking steps towards becoming more self-aware, because we can't release anything until we're aware of it.
Yeah.
So that was the true kind of change for me. It's just that self-awareness part.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, taking time to like in between like working with people and stuff like that to just be with yourself and like it's so silly, but I find like just being by myself and I like to put like one hand on my chest and one hand kind of like on my tummy and just like kind of breathe and be like, okay, like these emotions I'm feeling, like where are they coming from? And like why?
Yeah.
Because so often I think we feel things, but we're kind of disconnected from them. We don't actually know why we're feeling them. And it can be like, it can just cause turmoil inside because you're just like,
Yes.
it's not good, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
So,
And it's okay. I mean, I think it's okay now, because I still get like that every now and then. Right. But you do have to take that time. Like you said, like, there's times where I have to, I live pretty close to the beach, and that was always my place. My therapist asked me, she was like, where was your place of peace when you were younger? Well, it was chaos in my household. Right. So I lived right there. So I always went to the beach and just sat. And she was like, go back to that. You live
yeah.
right here now. Right. Like, you're not away from the beach like you were in the military or whatever, but you're here now, you're back. So when you start feeling those feelings, just go back to that. And maybe you just need to take a couple deep breaths. And so there are times, and if I can't make it to the beach, then I just go outside, or like you said, I just sit there for a second, but we have to do those things, because I didn't used to. I used to just be like, go, 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 right? Like that's how we operate. We're just operators. We're like, just like I said, those systems, right? It's like, that's the programming. It's like, we don't stop. We're unstoppable, right? But sometimes we have to kind of come back and just take that time. So now in my life, like there was a time where I would wake up and go straight to the gym. I didn't give myself time to like, get myself together, right? Because I was just used to operating. But now I wake up early in the morning. It's quiet. Nobody's up. I wake up early in the morning and I take that time for myself. And you know, and it looks different for everybody. Mindfulness, I was on another podcast and we were talking about mindfulness. It looks different for everybody. For me, sitting still was difficult. Sitting
Mm.
still for 1 minute. So that's where I started. So when I talk about like the small little habits, right? I set a timer for 1 minute when I first started. It was like, if I can sit still for 1 minute, right? Like, let me just see. So that's where I started, but I started a couple years ago, you know, and so here I am now. I can, and I don't always just sit still. Like sometimes I'm a writer, so sometimes I'll write. You know, I'll write to my higher power. Like I'll have conversations with myself. People are probably like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "Oh, I don't care." Like if you want to call that crazy, but it's healing for me. So
Yeah.
right.
Mm.
So it really is just I always tell people just embrace the journey, and everybody's journey looks different. I do give people tools, but they have to learn how to use them in their own life, you know, just
Yeah.
like you do. It's like we can give them all the tools in the toolbox that we have,
Mhm.
but how they implement them is ultimately up to them. And you know, like we were talking about having, you know, our people and maybe not our people, right?
Yeah.
When we're people who want to help other people, it's difficult to say, you know what, I gotta let you gotta do you for a little while. I'll be here when you're ready, but you
Mhm.
gotta do you for a little while, right? But I've really had to do that with people, you know, and I have to be okay with that. And I have to know that some of them are gonna come back and some of them aren't. And that's
Yeah.
okay too. Um, because it's also allowed me to value myself more and be like, you know what, this is what I was like, we were talking about settling, right? This is what I was settling for because this is all I knew. Well, now I'm around people that are like, you know, doing a whole lot better in life and you know, like they value themselves. And I'm like, ooh, I should do that too, right? Like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like you're really a lot more fulfilled than than I was, right? Um, so I learned, I always, you know, talk about, and this is a common thing I've heard a lot, where it's like if you're the smartest person in the room, you should probably leave the room, right? Um, there are times where I might be the subject matter expert, right? Like you're the subject matter expert in nutrition. I'm, you know, there's times when we are the subject matter expert, but I also choose to surround myself. Like when I coach other coaches, I always tell them, like, when you go network with people that aren't personal trainers, go network with people that aren't nutrition coaches, right? Because number one, you're more valuable at that point because you're doing something
Yeah.
they're not, but they're more valuable because they know things that you don't.
Exactly.
My greatest connections have come out of that. You know, the greatest people in my life right now have come out of me just taking a risk, taking a step out and being like, oh, you know, leaving what I was comfortable with, right? Like I'm comfortable with all the gym people, right? All the people that, you know, I'm comfortable with those people, but leaving that and understanding that, like, yeah, but that's not really my target market. They're already in there, right? Now I can help the personal trainers now because I'm doing online coaching and a lot of them want to leverage their time. Great. So I can
Mhm.
help with that now. But at that time, it was like, okay, well, I'm in a room full of people that, I mean, we might have great conversations, but what's really going to come out of this? You know?
Yeah.
So I've had to really just learn how to, um, yeah, people joke around. They say your tagline should be "Welcome to the uncomfort zone" because yeah, we don't grow if we just stay comfortable. You know, so we just
Yeah.
have to keep going into rooms that we never thought we'd go into. Right? We have to be around people that we never thought we could be around. You know, my best friend is a multimillionaire. You couldn't have told me that 5 years ago, right? Like, but she's so humble. I wouldn't have known that. You know, that's not how we started. Right? Like, but she knows financial stuff. And I'm like, well, I need to hang out with you because you got it. Like
Mhm.
you're doing what I need to be doing. Right. So you find those people that you're meant to be around, right? Like we were talking about the right people. So instead of, I actually just posted a blog yesterday and I was talking about, you know, valuing ourselves and learning the type of people that we desire to be around,
Mhm.
you know, because we can't just accept everything.
Yeah.
But when we come from, you know, depending on our background, if you come from a scarcity kind of situation,
Mhm.
it's very difficult to think abundantly. Like I
Yeah.
have a couple of mentors that'll tell you it took a couple of years. Like they were like, all right. And so now I know how long it took me, so I try to just be patient with people. But I have to work with people that are also going to be patient with themselves, because I had to learn how to be patient with myself.
Yeah. I think so often we like, especially depending like the people we're surrounded with and the backgrounds we come from, we so often think they could never imagine six figures or could never imagine being able to work like have a full-time business that runs, but you don't work full time kind of thing. Like
Right.
beautiful things in life, somehow you limit yourself from it. Like I can't have that because like all the people around me work 9 to 5s and barely get by.
Right.
And but then you like look at the people who do have that and you're like, well, if they can have it, why can't I have it? You know?
Exactly.
Seriously. Like why could I not have this? Like everyone in this world could have it. Well, I mean, obviously there are some situations that would hold you back, but probably everyone in the US
Right.
could have that. But it's going to be hard and it's going to be scary and it's going to be your mindset, because the reason why everyone doesn't have it is because they limit themselves from it. They tell themselves they can't do it and they just need to follow the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I've had to even had that conversation with myself, because it's like sometimes it comes down to like how worthy you feel and how much you value yourself, of like, well, I don't deserve this. And it's like, well, why not?
Why
You
not?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not be? I have a good friend, and we see each other every day. So, your gym. I have a gym family now. Like, it's really like 3 people, but we kind of keep each other afloat, right? And he always says that, he's like, why not you? Right? Like, and I have another shirt that says perfectly imperfect. Like, we're all imperfect, and we're supposed to be imperfect, because that's why, when especially you were talking about the community, right? Like, that's how we bounce things off of each other. That's how we grow each other. That's how we level up together,
Yeah.
and I always tell people, I'm like, hey, I want you to come with me. Now, whether or not you want to, I can't force that part, right? But I
Mhm.
want you with me, because the people that I'm around wanted me with them when I
Yeah.
thought I didn't deserve it, when I thought I couldn't do better. They didn't give up on me. So I don't want to give up on you. But if you give up on you, I can't help you after that, right? Like, all right, hit me up later. I gotta keep going with these people. I always say I'm running with the runners, so we gotta keep running. I can't go back anymore. Because that's another thing I allowed. I allowed, the scarcity mindset of others to cause me to have a more scarcity mindset again, because that was
Yeah.
my default, right? That's your default. So if
Mhm.
that's your default, you have to get around people who don't think that way, because
Yeah.
as soon as you get around the default people, right, you're going to default right back to that.
Mhm.
It's just like an addict, right? I mean, I saw talk about the people pleaser addiction, but drugs and alcohol. Like, I grew up with an alcoholic, right? If she went to the bar, you can't be around the same people,
Yeah.
right? You can't. If you're trying to grow and do better, you cannot be around the same people,
Yeah. No.
and that's why a lot of addicts fall right back into, what they were doing before. Drugs is the same, right? Or anything really, you just fall right back into it if you're not being careful. And so that's what I tell people. I'm like, hey, I want you in my network if you want to be there, but it's up to you to want to be there. Because if
Yeah.
you're going to pull me back, I can't do that anymore. I just can't. It's a boundary now. So placing those healthy boundaries, and that's something else I had to work through. The EMDR really changed my life. I will say that, because as hard as it was, I mean, it was rough. I'm not gonna lie. There was times after the sessions where I couldn't even go home. Like, I was just like, I can't even be around anybody right now. Like, I'm gonna look like I'm crazy, right? I can't even go home. But it changed my life because I learned healthy boundaries. I learned that I needed to be able to allow myself to feel like I deserved abundance, instead of lack. That's where I
Mhm.
came from. I don't want that anymore. And I know mentally where that got me. And so, yeah, I had a conversation one time. I went and spoke up in North Carolina, and I had just had my wrist surgery. I had a wrist surgery back in January. And I said, these are the scars that you can see. I've had 9 surgeries. I have a bunch of scars, right? Like, these are the scars you can see. They're physical, right? These are the scars you can't see. These are the ones that matter.
Yeah.
These heal, these only heal if we become aware of them, if we work through them. Right. Like I can go to physical therapy. I went to physical therapy for my wrist, but that was like a few months. Right. Some of these things, like I said, my therapist, she told me, she's like, you're going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life, but it's going to be freeing. Like she even put that positive spin on it. It's going to be freeing because thank you. Like, right. Like
Doom and
you're
gloom
going to
with the
be dealing
positive
with
side.
this. But she was real with me. And so that's, I love that about her because she didn't sugarcoat anything. Right. Like, we talk about nutrition. Like I don't do new meal plans. I won't do meal plans because, and I don't ever go against anybody that's doing that. But for me, I feel like I'm like, if I'm just teaching you how to follow something, right? Is that really consistent? Is that really sustainable for the rest of your life? So for her, it was the same thing. It was like, hey, there's no real system for this. It's the same thing. She gave me tools and I had to
Mhm.
learn how to use them in my own life. So that's what I do with other people. It's like, hey, I can give you all this information that I've learned, or you can get it. I mean, I have a ton of free information out there, you know, but you have to learn. You got to get this under control. You got to believe it's possible. You got to believe that you can, track your foods. You got to believe that you can walk inside of the gym and do it. You got to believe that you can be grateful for the things that, even though it might look like your life is falling apart on the outside, to find that one little thing that is keeping you afloat. You can
Yeah.
believe in that. I have one of my friends, she asked me the other day, she said, if I had any advice for entrepreneurs, uh, what would it be? And I said, believe in it. Believe in it. Believe for it. Maybe it's not right in front of your face right now, but believe it's possible. Like I do vision boards every year.
Oh,
And the first time I did it, I was like, I wasn't there yet mentally to where I could really believe for it now, but I was around people that really did. So that,
yeah.
that kind of hyped me up a little bit. And I had my daughter with me. So of course that's a motivation, right? Like I don't ever want to put that on her where it's like scarcity in the world, right?
Mhm.
So, but looking back now, I didn't really believe for it. So I put all this stuff on the board and yeah, it looks great, but I didn't really believe for it. But so now when I do them, I'm very intentional, very
Mhm.
intentional. Because now I know I'm like, well, I have to believe in this. I have to believe, and it might be a few years from now, right? Like, I don't know. I don't ever try to figure that part out, but I
Yeah.
have to believe for it. I have to say, you know what? That is possible. And like you said, why not me? Why not
Yeah.
me? You know, the more stuff we go through, why not me?
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly it. Just by cutting yourself out of the equation, you've already determined that your value is less than someone else's, and it's just not the case.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, and I love the vision board idea. I feel like because I was gonna say like putting it into something physical that you can kind of like help your subconscious see, like even saying it every day, like I don't know, whatever your goal is, like I'm gonna hit this or I am this, and then just telling yourself that so
Mhm.
one day you believe it, and so then you can do it because that's really all it is just like a
Yeah.
belief system,
Yeah.
whether you can or you won't. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think like just pushing to goals that feel scary but still tangible, because you've got to have that, it's got to be scary and you've got to reach, you've got to grow, but
Yeah.
like also being like, okay, well, it's like it's enough there, but it's possible, like I could see me hitting this, but at the same time, like I'm gonna have to push myself. I'm gonna have to put a little
Yes.
fire under my ass. I'm gonna have to get a little scared, but like
Yes.
I can get there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, just what you said. I mean, it's nothing would have changed in my life had it not been for taking risks and, being scared. And you couldn't have told me 5 years ago that I'd be able to stand in front of a lot of people and speak. Right. Like I was always that behind the scenes person. Like, I don't want to do public speaking. Right. I was a
that's
writer. Like I'd rather write. I'd rather write and just put it out there and let you read it. Right. But I ended up meeting this guy. We called him Coach Shep, and he used to actually be the coach for the New York Mets, but he was down here in Jacksonville, Florida. So we developed kind of a relationship mentorship. He was mentoring me a little bit. Because he saw something in me that I did, right? Like, and you always want those kind of people too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the ones that see something in you that you don't, because then they can be like, you can do
Yeah.
this, right? But anyway, we were having a conversation. He's an older man, and he said, what's the difference? And he spoke all over the world, right? Like he's been speaking for however many years. Um, Amazing mentor. But he said, what's the difference in speaking to one person and 10,000? And I said, 10,000. Like, duh. Like, that's an easy question, right? Like, that's an easy answer. He said, no. He said, what you need to do, he said, you have conversations. I hear you all the time, because we were in the same, he was renting out space in this fitness center that I was in at the time. And he was like, I hear you have conversations all the time. He was like, what you need to do is remove yourself from the equation and stop focusing on you. And I was like, nobody ever told me that before. Like, ouch. And I didn't really know how to take that at first. But when I go to speak now, that's I say those words to myself. Remove yourself from the equation. It's not about me. It's about how many people do I want to help? How many people? If I can get in front of 10,000, hopefully I can help 100, right? It's that 10% rule. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully I can help more if I can get in front of more. So that's what I really focus on. That's why most of my stuff now is like group centered. Now I do take one-on-one clients, but I value myself a lot more now.
Yeah.
And I don't just do nutrition, and I don't just do, exercise. It's like, either you want my whole entire system or you don't want any of it, because I can refer you to somebody else, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. So I've had to come to that and be okay with it. And it's valuable to be able to value ourselves. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think we all go through it. Most of us, especially starting out, it's like, well, they only charge this, so maybe I should only do this, and then over time, it's like, okay, but yeah, especially with what, being in the health and wellness, right? It's like, we're changing people's lives. You're saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills, right? Like,
Yeah.
I had a business coach, and she said, Jodi, what, if you had to put a number on how much it cost you for your education, for your time that it took you to get all these certifications and all these other things, right? And I had to sit on that for like a week, because I really hadn't thought of it. I really had not thought of it. And when I came back, now the military paid for some of it, I was in the military, but I came back and I was like, wow, if I could put it together, I mean, that's like $150,000 easy. And that's not even including the time.
Yeah.
So she was like, yeah, so see what you're charging other people? No wonder you're broke. And then she made me aware of the fact, and I think this is where it really hit me. And I actually talk about this when I'm mentoring other entrepreneurs. It's like, if your people are buying houses and cars and their lives are flourishing while I was living off of credit cards, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So it's really just about, being willing to say, you know what, I need to change some stuff. And then like I said, being around people that allow for that, they're thinking abundantly. They value themselves. They're like, okay, well, you're charging that. Why am I not charging that again?
It goes directly back to that value, like, your worth and your self-love. I mean, that's what the pricing will come down to. And that's something I've been going through with myself. And like, when I came to that realization of like, oh, you don't charge enough because you don't love yourself, I was like fooled out, like crying, like, like
that
that's,
part, that
and
part, when
I
that,
think,
oof,
yeah,
that gets real. It gets
mhm,
real. I've had people break down on these kind of calls, right? Like I do Zoom calls all the time.
yeah,
Because I have people wherever. I've had people break down, and I've broken down though. I've been the one on the other side of the call where
yeah.
I was the one who broke down. That, realizing that it's because you don't love yourself.
It's a tough pill to
Ouch.
swallow. Yeah.
Ouch, right? But how many of us operate like that?
hmm I would say
So
most
the
of us.
fact that we can say that, like I love now that I can say I didn't love myself for
hmm
most of my life.
Yeah.
because people need to hear that, and we can cry it out and I'll hug them, like I've had, it's funny. I always say I am the church. Like I'll go to the gym. I've had a couple of personal trainers cry on my shoulder in the locker room.
Oh.
You don't know what people are going through, right?
Mm.
And people look at the personal trainer and think they got it all together, right? But no, we're people too,
Yeah. Yeah. We're
So
all
it's
fighting.
just about sharing. Yeah, it's like we have to share these things. We have to be authentic. We have to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
I didn't realize that my story could impact so many people. I didn't, there was a time where I shared on Instagram. I'll never forget this. It was when I first started EMDR, and I didn't know why I was sharing because I was a mess. I was like, why am I getting on a live video right now? Like I have no business doing this, right? But there was an urge to do it. And I've learned now in my life to not fight those urges so much because I used to.
Yeah.
Because what came out of that was I actually got a message from a woman, and it was a private message, obviously, but she said, hey, I just want you to know I appreciate you sharing your story today. She said, I was on the verge of committing suicide.
Oh.
I wanted to end my life, and you gave me hope. And I get chills every time I talk about that because I needed to see that message.
Mhm.
Because after that, it was like game on. I'm sharing everything, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, like, right. But not oversharing, because then I found out, they don't have to hire you after that. So you got to be careful. Don't overshare. but, but just, being that person. I mean, I think I posted a video last week where it was like my daughter, I'm learning that, my teenage daughter, she doesn't need mommy like she used to, right? Like,
Oh.
and that's hard, but there's so many other moms that are going through that too, or they're
Yeah.
ahead of me and they can come back and be like, hey, this is what I did. You live your life, right? Like she's going to be okay. Be there to mentor her, be there to support her or whatever. But don't let that part get to you. She's going to come back around, and
Yeah.
we just have to
Yeah. Then
share
you
these
get
things.
to like, then they get older, like around my age, where I'm like, Mom, pay attention to me. And my mom's
That's
like,
not,
off the thing. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be your number one. Like, what?
well, and I'll tell you, the reality check for me. So my mom passed away 3 months before our daughter was born.
Oh,
So, I didn't have her when I had our daughter and stuff like that. And it's been,
I'm sorry.
it's been 14 years now, but, um, that was a reality check for me because I wasn't really taking care of myself. I was working full time. I was in the military, right? So I would work night shift. I was working on the flight line at the time. I worked on airplanes. So I would work night shift. I'd get off work, drive 2 hours, take care of my mom, take a nap at the rest stop on the way back, and drive back home, take another nap maybe if I could. But I was also in school, so I was taking classes. So I'm getting my homework done, and then I go to
Oh.
work, right? And that was, so when we talk about operating, that's all I was doing, operating,
Mhm.
operating, operating. I would crash every now and then, right? Like there'd be those days where I'd sleep like 10 hours, and like, dang, where'd that come from? Um, but that was definitely a huge reality check. And so I always tell people, I'm like, look, I know that, drinking a gallon of water or eating better or exercising, I know that that's not going to combat everything. I know some of the healthiest people. I have an aunt that she was one of the healthiest people I knew, and she ended up with Alzheimer's. I am aware that I am not going to be able to combat everything in life, but
Mm.
I'm going to do everything in my power to try to be here as long as possible for my kid,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's where, like, I have a worksheet that I have people fill out when they contact me for coaching. And if they don't want to fill out that worksheet, I know they're not my people. So that's the first step, because it gets real and I need to know where you're at, and one of the questions on there is, what's your why? Why now? Because if that why is not big enough, you're not going to last. And I know that my why had to be so much bigger than me. And so that's why I tell people, especially entrepreneurs, I'm like, you got to find a why that is bigger than you, because you'll give up on yourself.
Mhm.
We'll let ourselves down 98% of the time. We'll show up for everybody else around us.
Yeah.
We keep commitments to everybody else, right? Like, oh, I told them I'd be there at 2:00. I got to be there at 2:00. But if I say I got to be somewhere at 2:00 for me, I can let myself down, because no, I'm not accountable to anybody, right?
Yeah.
So our why has to be bigger, because we're not going to have somebody to be accountable for all the time, right? Like, people are going to let us down, and that's okay. They're going through stuff too, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be able to, because I hear this all the time, especially in the gym, like, well, my friend didn't come, so I didn't come. I'm like, you're hurting yourself because your friend didn't come. If I relied on somebody to get me to the gym at this point, I would never go,
Yeah.
ever. so so that's why I'm just like, you gotta find that thing. And I don't know what that is for people. I can't find that for them. But in order for us to start the coaching, they gotta have it. And it's gotta be big, because that's what we're gonna default to. And I say we because I always tell them, like, hey, I'm locking arms with you at that point, right? Like, that's what we're going to default to. When you start giving me excuses, when you start telling me, whatever, I'm going to be like, what was your why again?
Yeah.
What was that again? What did we start this for? And when they go back to that, and that, I mean, like I said, I had mentors. I have mentors. Mentors need mentors. I don't care who you are, right? Like, I have mentors that do that for me, right? Jodi, don't give up. What are you doing this for again? Oh, because I can't show my daughter that giving up is an option. Shifting is good. Yes, we all have to shift, and we should shift, right?
Yeah.
Giving up is not an option. Quitting is not an option, right? I can't show her that. So that's my why. I always go back to that. Because yes, entrepreneurship is hard. Life is hard. Right?
Yeah.
Like, but it doesn't have to be as hard as we allow it to be. We just have to find, I have a good friend, she said this the other day, she said harmony. It's not about balance. We're not going to be able to balance our lives out. And I always tell people, plan with flexibility. We have to plan things out. We have to be intentional, but plan with flexibility. Things will come up, and you just have to learn how to shift around them. But she said harmony. She said it's not about work-life balance. It's about finding harmony in life.
Oh, I love that.
People, like, I don't take days off. I take time off. Right? Because I have to find that harmony. And I still have things that I have to do. When you're a business owner, and I mean, once you start recruiting other people, that's great, but you're pretty much it, right? It's like, and that's why now I'm like, I got to pay this forward, because I got to keep this train going, even when I got to go. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing now. But when we first start out, usually it's just us. All right. So we're everything. We're HR, we're whatever, we're marketing, we're every single department that you could think of. And it can get overwhelming.
It can quickly. Yeah.
It can get overwhelming. And so, like, with entrepreneurship, I tell people, like, hey, don't make the same mistake I did, right? I had 100 things on my list and thought that I was going to get that done in a day on top of my life, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, okay, what are the 3 top priorities for today? Right? Like, I'm on a podcast today, so that's one. That's it, right? So now I got 2 more.
You're a
and
third of the
as long as I can, check those off, great. And it, I had one of my clients, she had that long to-do list. And I said, cool. I said, I want you to circle the top 5 things that you want to do this week. Because she was active duty military. She's a mom. She's, starting a business. She wanted to start a business. So I said, okay, all of those. I said, great. Post that on your wall. Keep it there, right? Don't get rid of it. Keep it there. But every week, only circle 5 things off of it. If you get those 5 things, now if you get 6 done, woo, celebration, right? But even if you get those 5 done, great.
Yeah.
If you get 10 done, now you feel really good. Right? Like, so it's really just about adapting and overcoming.
Yeah. That long to-do list can be, it can just like that. You're like, oh, now I'm frozen because I don't know where to start.
Analysis paralysis. I said that yesterday. I was with this one lady, and we were talking about that similarly, right? And
that's so funny.
I wish sometimes I wish I could record every conversation. I'm like, I just need somebody to follow me around. I have great conversations all the time. Like, just follow me around and record some of them, right? Like, but that's what I said, because we were talking about the same thing, how if it's too much, it can get overwhelming, right? And I said, I was like, analysis paralysis,
It's like, it's so hard. I don't know. then you're like, okay, I need to get all these things done, but then you stare at it and then you're frozen and you don't know what to do. And that, yeah, I've felt that way too many times. I'm at the point right now where I'm like, okay, I have to bring someone else onto my team or else I can never get everything done that I need to. But then, like, with that comes a whole other list of to-dos and responsibilities. And
Yes.
you're like, oh my goodness, like,
Yes.
it's just the way of entrepreneurship. But it's
Yeah.
fun because you're constantly adapting and learning something new.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about being an entrepreneur is that it's constantly pushing you. You know, you cannot stay stagnant. You're always going to be growing.
Yes. You should be. You should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has
And
been so awesome. I'm so glad that you came on.
well,
And
thank you
thank you
for
so
having
much for
me.
sharing all these amazing conversations on here. I would love if you would just share with the audience like a little bit about your book, where they can find that, and then like more about you if anyone wants to work with you or collaborate with you in any way.
Yeah. Everything, just go jodiwatkins.com. That's my website. I have a link tree. So if anybody's familiar with that, it's just linktree/Jodi Watkins. I did find out you can Google my name and find out just about anything you need to know, which is good. There are a couple other Jodi Watkins though, so make sure it's me. Um, but yeah, so my website, if people want a signed copy, they have a store on jodiwatkins.com that they can go and they can purchase it off of there, and then I'll get that notification.
Oh,
And then I'll send it, usually I'll put a couple of personable gifts in there or whatever, a little bit extra. So I have that on there, and then Amazon or any other book platform, if they want to just get a copy, if they want a hard copy, so all I have is paperbacks on me.
cool.
Yeah, so
You know,
that's where they can get the book.
some information in the show notes about your online community that you were talking about as well. I think that
Yeah,
that would.
like I said, everything, if they go to jodiwatkins.com, all the links are right there. I do
Oh,
have that online community, but it's part of a collaborative platform. So like I said, like the women's community is on there. We have a small business builders community. We have a health and wellness community where we're looking for other coaches to come in there. And that's where I'm mentoring other coaches as well with the person that I'm partnering with on that. And so we have like all these different communities all in one place. And so now we're just looking for great people who want to be a part of it. And that's my community. They've become my family. We have kind of a round table where there's, some of us community leaders that we kind of get together, and we have calls every Monday where we do networking. We invite whoever on. Each community has their own calls as well. So I just tell people, like, if you do navigate to the platform, you're going to go to my community, but go explore all the other ones. See where you fit in. If you're an entrepreneur, I am one of the co-leaders for the small business builders community as well. And then of course we have that women's community too that we're trying to build out. So, we're always looking for community leaders, people that kind of want to step up and do more stuff, or people that just want to grow either a support group, or maybe they want to, have a course. Like I have my courses. I have everything's all in one spot, which has helped me tremendously. But
yeah.
like I said, if they navigate to my website, all my social media is on there as well. And then, like I said, on my link tree also, they can find anything. I have my podcast on there as well. So yeah,
Awesome.
I try to
Well,
keep it easy for people. Like,
it's always nice to have everything in one spot.
yes. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing 50 million different things, right? So the hardest part for me is like making sure I simplify it, like so
Oh,
people
yeah,
don't
for
get
sure.
confused. Yeah. So I have a couple of link trees that lead to other link trees, but hey, bear with me, okay?
Making things work.
Do what you got to do. Yeah. But I definitely invite everyone. I hope you and maybe your listeners want to come into that
Yeah.
community and be part of a supportive network. Because like you said, we all need that community. And when you said that, I was just like, yeah, that's what I'm a part of. And it's changed my life, because
Yeah.
I was ready to throw in the towel. I'm not gonna lie. I came across that in 2020, and I had just published my book, and I had all these like book signing events that were supposed to happen, and COVID
Um,
started, and it was just
oh,
everything went away. So I was really at that place where I was just like, now what? And
yeah.
I got invited to what I call my family now, and the founder of the resource, he's a retired Marine, and he's also a counselor, and we just so much alignment. And so he's been one of my main mentors. So I tell everybody, I'm like, hey, these people are my people, and I invite you to meet them too, because they're awesome people. you know
I love that. I think that's a great that you're putting that together and helping to build that community. So yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I said, just go to my website. I love for, anybody if they need anything or and I refer people as well. If I'm not your person, then usually I have a pretty well connected. So I'll refer people to other people too. I'm aware that I'm not for everybody, which is like my shirt says, right? Again, it's that self-awareness, right? Like I'm not for everybody.
Yeah. You're like,
But,
I know.
like I love having other people, like, if you were there, if anybody else is there, it's like, oh, maybe I don't have the capacity to work with somebody and I can be like, hey, go check her out and see if there's an alignment there or whatever. So
Yeah.
being able to refer people out, I think is huge too. And just having that confidence and valuing yourself enough, right, to
Yeah.
be able to say, it's okay. Like I'm not able to do it right now, but hey, let me invite you to go meet this other person. And they're awesome too. If I've met
Yeah.
them, and they're great too. So
Yeah. I love that. Collaboration, support, all of those things are so needed. So
we live in a world of abundance. We just have to be willing to accept it,
yes, exactly.
believe for it.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Definitely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.